following program is distributed by the Bears Barroom Radio Network. It's presented live over mixlr.com and later disseminated in podcast format on most delivery platforms. It's intended for all audiences. Never before in the history of sports podcast has one show made this promise. Draft on Tap will report on every college prospect pro scouts are looking at for the 2020 NFL Draft. Every one of them.
Sanders, smothered. Chase Young, another big play.
Montez second and goal. Steps in. Caught. Touchdown. The third passing touchdown of the first half for Steven Montez. There's Johnson. He's got it. Touchdown, Texas. An open man at the 25. A foot race for the tight end. There's that man again. Albert O with his second score. 47 yards.
Draft on Tap with Bears Barroom Draft Analyst Danny Shimon. Your host, Ryan Badgley. And featuring some of the most respected draft analysts in the country. Grab a beer. We're about to make history.
And making history is what we do on Bears Barroom Radio Network. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Ryan Badgley, and welcome to Draft on Tap. We have a great show planned for you as we'll welcome in Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports in just a little bit to talk free agency and the draft. But first, let me welcome in Bears Barroom Draft Analyst Danny Shimon. Danny, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, considering what's going on in our country in these past few weeks. So family's all doing good. So far, so good. Hopefully everyone out there, Badge, you as well, your family, and everyone out there listening right now is all doing well and healthy and just staying safe, staying quarantined and keeping my social distance.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all you can do, Danny, in a time like this. And everybody here on my home front is well, and we'll certainly hope that continues here. And everyone listening in tonight, we wish the same for you and all your family as well, and anyone, obviously, throughout the entire world. That's the thing that is crazy going through this. So first up, Danny, we want to talk about the NFL and how they've decided to keep the draft at the scheduled dates, which is fantastic news.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there was a question in terms of maybe possibly pushing back the start of the new league year, subsequently that's pushed back the start of free agency. But, I don't know how everyone else out there feels, but I'm kind of glad they didn't do it because, like right now, it just kind of gives you a diversion, from watching the news, watching all these other thing that's going on, like I said, across the country or in other countries, I should say. It's a nice diversion, kind of get your mind off of things. So I think keeping the draft, although it's going to be something that's going to affect a lot of these teams and how they draft, and we'll get into it with our guest Eric Edholm later on. But this is going to have a ripple effect that's going to be felt maybe probably a couple years down the line as well. So I'm glad that they're keeping it on the dates. I'm interested in seeing how this is going to be done now because, obviously the big show in Vegas has been canceled. All the the events with the fans there has been canceled. So they're going to do it like an in-studio,
sure, probably
old school way, when back in the old days. So I'll be curious to see how it all goes, plays about, but definitely interested in another added diversion here with the NFL and the NFL draft.
Yeah, without question, Danny. It'll be no doubt about it. I think it'll still be one of the greatest sporting events. I don't want to say sporting event, but it's something that I look forward to. I love it. I know for guys on this network, it's like their Christmas. So with that, Danny, excited to welcome in our guest tonight, Eric Edholm, the lead draft analyst at Yahoo Sports. And Eric, we want to welcome you to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on. And how you doing tonight?
Yeah, good being back on with you guys. Glad to be here. I appreciate it. Glad to hear you guys are doing well health-wise, and hopefully we are too. We're we're going to keep our fingers crossed, and like you said, stay indoors and until they let us out.
Eric, we just kind of talked about at the top of the show here, with the NFL, keeping the league year as scheduled, starting free agency as planned, and then also kind of, now announcing, it was like yesterday where they said that they're planning on keeping the draft, April 23rd to the 25th, the way it's currently scheduled. So, your thoughts on the NFL, starting off first the league year, on time, and then now also, holding steadfast to, maintaining those draft dates. I heard the NHL has already, canceled or postponed their combine and their draft. So, thoughts on the NFL, kind of staying the course here.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a little bit of stubbornness from some folks in the league office. There was some support for pushing it back, changing the format, waiting for some new developments in all the COVID stuff that's going on, and maybe hoping for a Hail Mary of sorts and possibly have some sort of public event, or at least make the logistics of this event easier. That was I think what some folks were thinking, but it sounds like the NFL has gone full steam ahead. I think Roger Goodell on Thursday night even issued a second statement of some sort. I didn't read it, but I did see an alert about it saying that this was going to happen. And so I think when they made that initial decision to pivot from, the live event in Vegas and go with this made for TV event, I think they were just all systems go on that and felt like any delays or changes to the plan were just going to be, more work for them. So I know that behind the scenes, they say they're working pretty hard to make this feel like a big event. We're so used to the crowds and, the reactions and just the roar. It's going to be a different sounding draft this year. How are they going to get that big moment feel when the picks are announced? Is it going to be, I just don't know how it's going to feel, but usually that night my head is down buried. I'll actually be doing our draft show that night. And so I probably won't be hearing too much of the reaction anyway. So it's more for you guys and more for everybody else who's listening right now.
Right. So the booing of the picks or the shock, the awe when a guy's picked that wasn't supposed to go in the first round or whatnot. So yeah, that definitely is going to have
no awkward green room stuff this year. No, strained faces and no, agents pulling their guys aside and whispering them and handing them phones and things like that, making them look busy. It's all gone.
Yeah, that's some of the drama that builds up during the whole draft process. Was all that those guys, who's going to be the last one in the green room, like I said, and some of the antics that agents like Drew Rosenhaus has done or pulled off in the past, stuff like that. So that definitely is going to be something that's going to be weird. But you wrote a great article on Yahoo.com about the COVID-19 pandemic and not only how it has affected this 2020 draft, but how it's going to have a possible ripple effect going on to the 2021 selection process. Can you just kind of give our listeners a bit of an overview of what you covered in that article?
Yeah, the big story, the big takeaway is that scouts more now than ever, or at least, going back to a certain day, the tape really matters the most. And it always has, right? I mean, you ask any scout, they're going to say, watch the tape. You'll see who the player is. The measurements, the testing numbers, all that other stuff is, it's important information to kind of fill out the picture. But obviously the bulk of the analysis is going to come from the legwork that you do, watching the player on the field, watching them in practice, talking to the coaches, see how they prepare. And a lot of that stuff, I think the players who get hurt the most are the ones who either didn't attend one of the All-Star games like the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine game, one of the other smaller bowls like the NFLPA Bowl or the Hula Bowl, or the players who weren't invited to the Combine, or if you want to throw in the guys who were there but didn't work out. I think there will be a little bit of a lesser effect, but the ones who didn't go to the Combine and didn't go to an All-Star game, right now teams are scrambling for accurate heights, weights, 40 times, all that stuff. They're trying to, I talked to a team who said, we have a player we like, and we don't even know who his agent is at this point. As somebody that they really realistically could draft in the 6th or 7th round, or kind of a late round guy. And, as of a day ago, they hadn't been able to track down who the guy's agent is. They were looking for his phone number. That's an extreme example, but it tells you just how incomplete this picture is right now. So, Normally that stuff gets solidified at the pro days. They put it into this thing called the APT report. Every team gets updated copies every single week. Well, the pro days were shut down after about 40 of them or something. I don't know what the actual number was, but it was about that. It was about a week and a half or whatever. And, so a lot of guys missed out on that opportunity. And as somebody pointed out to me, and I forget who it was who told me, but every year there are 35 to 40, roughly, players who do not get invited to the Combine who are drafted. And then there's another 100 or whatever who go to the Combine but aren't drafted. So, but of that 35 or 40, the vast majority of them are guys who test really well at their pro day. They have this big, think about somebody like Camus, Illinois guy, I'll try to think. Camus Grugier-Hill from Eastern Illinois was Jimmy Garoppolo's teammate there. He was a priority free agent type of guy, and he puts on a show at his pro day, and people were there to do the work on Garoppolo, even though he had been at Northwestern's pro day. And it got him drafted late by New England, and he's made a career. He went to the Eagles for a couple of years, signed another contract with another team. So that's a good example of a player who, and every year there are countless ones of them. I think this year it sounds like there might be a dozen of those guys, and they're not going to have it with the benefit of the pro day workout. It's just going to be the fact that teams have done their homework. They know the player. They felt he should have been at the Combine, and they just liked him and stamped a grade on him. So injured players, non-Combine guys, small school guys, non-all-star guys, I think those are the ones who could be hurt. And for the ones who checked all those boxes, Clemson, Auburn, those, Wisconsin had their pro days. Some of those guys went to the all-star games too. They're the most known quantities. They're going to be helped by the process because somebody goes up, somebody else has to go down. That's just the way it is with the draft. So I suspect that's going to be the biggest takeaway.
Right. Another example, a great example of a guy that shined at his pro day was Julian Edelman from the Patriots. I mean, he's a guy who was a converted, quarterback who went to receiver, had some tested, some phenomenal numbers at pro day, at Kent State's pro day, and next thing you know, the Patriots bring him in, and he's look at him now. He's made millions and so on and so forth. So, but on the topic of free agency, obviously we just talked about it started on time, and it's been. It never, it's always exciting. It's always entertaining, start of free agency. So, there's been some surprises so far, besides the Tom Brady leaving New England, signing with Tampa Bay, what has surprised you so far that's occurred within the last, week and a half of free agency?
Yeah, I don't know that there's been any big shockers other than that one, obviously. I mean, I think just the way the quarterback carousel has gone, and we have Cam Newton, who has been released, to go from an MVP candidate in 2015, still in his peak age, was he 30 years old or whatever, unable to get a trade partner for him with health the concern, of course, but still, it's still a little bit mind-bending. The same year, Jameis Winston was the first pick in the draft. He's having a hard time finding a job or a good fit. Marcus Mariota, the number 2 pick in that draft, has to go to Oakland to compete and be a backup there, high-priced backup. But still, you get the idea that, that it's in the game of musical chairs, there are more quarterbacks than there are seats, and so there's, 3, possibly 4 first-round draft picks at that position as well that people are kind of counting on. But it's still a little bit stunning that, we're in this position here the way we are. And, so some top shelf talents who have, major question marks about them, but they're still unable to find work at the most important position in football. That's still surprising to me, even if, those questions exist.
So locally here, our Chicago Bears here have made a couple of some intriguing moves, if you will, think about them here. So for you, in terms of the Bears moves, which one intrigues you the most, and which one kind of leaves you, scratching your head, saying, what are they doing there?
Yeah, let's do it in reverse order, if that's okay. The head scratcher to me is Jimmy Graham. So I'm probably not alone amongst the listeners. I think there are a lot of people who said, okay, bringing him in is one thing. Giving him the money they did, $8 million per year on average, a no trade clause. Really, they're kind of stuck with him for this year, next. That's the biggest surprise. It was that kind of level of, I don't want to say desperation, but that level of high need that forced them to go that direction. It's just really uninspiring in a lot of ways because, other than a brief little flash here, a game there, he just didn't look like the same guy. And yes, I know Ryan Pace knows him from New Orleans, and, yes, it's possible he could have he's not that old, right? I mean, I think he's been around for a while, but we tend to think of him as maybe being a little older than he actually is. What is he, 31 or something like that? Maybe 32. But
Eric.
Is he really? Okay,
he's
34. Older than I thought.
So it makes it more or less attractive, right?
Yeah, make sure you guys have a good editor to cut that part out, right? No, I'm kidding. But, gosh, I was actually talking myself into him being younger. Maybe it's that I sit there and talk myself into I feel young. I mean, I'm 44, but heck, I feel 42. I don't know, So, but yeah, that's the one that confuses me the most because he's really just a one-trick pony, and that's the problem. I mean, he's not going to help you on special teams. He's not going to block for you. He's got to be that kind of seam receiver who hasn't flashed those skills consistently for a few years now. So that's the one that troubles me the most. I mean, Robert Quinn, I didn't see coming. I thought they'd add a pass rusher.
Sure.
And, I think everybody felt like, okay, if they're not hanging on to Leonard Floyd, you got to get somebody. I kind of thought it would be one of those second-round picks. So that one came out of nowhere a little bit for me. Hadn't heard any chatter of that. Maybe there was, but that's the intriguing one because the fact that we went from Khalil Mack was the greatest trade of all time that first year, 2018, to by the end of last season, I heard some depressed radio, man. I heard some guys out there saying, why would you ever trade for a pass rusher? And we paid too much for this guy, and Khalil Mack hasn't had a sack in a game and a half. It went from one extreme to the other. Do I think there's a happy medium? Yes. But obviously with Quinn and Mack, you have the potential to really wreak some havoc again. And it's, that's the part that you can make up for a less than great secondary when you have that pass rush.
Yeah, without question. And I have this question for you from Joey Two Scoops, Joe Mandel in our chat, asking if you've heard anything on the Trey Burton to the Colts front. We've seen this going on Twitter here a little bit, so we're curious if you've got anything on that.
I don't know. I mean, would it stun me that the Colts would want to add a tight end? Not at all. I mean, that's a position that I didn't think was one of their primary needs, but certainly something I could see them looking into. I have to think back. I think they were in on him in free agency, but the Bears struck quickly on that one, if I recall. I mean, He was one of their first signings. So I'd have to rack my brain a little bit, but I do believe the Colts checked in on him. Maybe the money got too big. Maybe they just weren't willing to make the commitment that Chicago did. But as far as specifics on the trade, I don't have that kind of knowledge. I haven't talked to Indy or Chicago in the last, 4 or 5 days or something like that. So, yeah, that would be an interesting one. I mean, obviously, Trey had some moments where you thought this might work. This could be interesting, and the injuries have just been, unfortunately, kind of a big roadblock.
I would think similar to the issue with Cam Newton and any player that's coming off an injury, with what's going on now, I think getting a physical to complete a trade like that, I think that will make it probably difficult to do, and that's just my guess. But yeah, I haven't heard about anything like that either.
Well, yeah.
So
we've already had a couple of voided deals in the NFL, and one of them was medical, and I'm sure there's going to be more. That's why I'm saying it's going to have an effect on the draft. It's had an effect already on free agency. There's no doubt that Newton's health is the biggest thing holding him back. So absolutely, I think any injured player right now, even if you go to the most respected doctor in the world, it's not the team's doctor, right? That's that guy they hired.
Exactly.
So yeah, that could be an impact, no doubt.
Yeah. So you just recently released a 2-round mock draft on Yahoo.com, and just kind of going over and seeing who you gave to the Bears. And at 43, you gave him a player that I absolutely love, and that's Arizona State wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. This is a kid that unfortunately at the Senior Bowl got injured and didn't really participate. But he's a kid. If you put on his tape, I mean, he is a playmaker. He's a guy that can take a 5-yard, slip screen and take it all, take it to the house. So give us your thoughts on Aiyuk and kind of your, thought process and giving them to the Bears at 43.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, like when I do these mocks, just so everybody kind of knows my process, like I just go pick by pick. I don't jump ahead. I don't hold back on guys. I try to think in the very moment, like what is this team going to do? And I don't project trades, so it's a little tricky, but it just kept going where there were some pretty good receivers on the board. And when I got to that pick, I said to myself, it's not as if they don't need a receiver. That wasn't the first position that came to mind. But you looked at the available talent, or I did, and I said to myself, they have these guys with some pretty good size. Anthony Miller obviously can be a yards after the catch guy. He's got that quickness, and, who knows what to expect out of him in year 3. I loved him coming out. Obviously we saw a little bit more down the stretch, but, you still could use that vertical threat. And the beautiful thing about Aiyuk, too, is that he can catch a 2-yard swing pass and take it 50 yards, too. He's got that burst,
Yep.
Kickoffs, you saw how fast he was on those things, and the jump balls down the field. His wingspan, guys, is insane. Like for a 5'11" and 3/4 guy or whatever he is, I think he's right around 6 foot. His wingspan is about Calvin Johnson's length. It's sort of the strangest body dimensions I think I've ever seen, but it allows him to high point those balls. And he's a JUCO kid who really kind of was in N'Keal Harry's shadow 2 seasons ago, and then last year played better than Harry did in 18. So, I mean, he really kind of took charge out there with a freshman quarterback, and it was exciting to see. He was a neat prospect to follow his path. So I just thought it's a value pick, and just like how Pace admitted that drafting Wims it was just the highest guy on our board. We didn't plan to draft the receiver. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you look and you say, how can we not take him? Even if it's not one of the 2, biggest needs or something at that point.
Yeah, I absolutely love the kid. Like you said, the kid's a playmaker in terms of, he's speed-wise, he ran a little bit of a disappointing 40 for me at the combine, but when you put on his tape, he's plenty fast. And he's a guy that he's plenty fast. So he's a guy that can get vertical, can stretch a defense, can, like you said, go across the middle, make those tough catches, a true playmaker. And a kid that I think I love the kid. If he's there at 43, if I'm the Bears, I'm all over him. At 50,
have you heard the nickname? Have you heard his nickname?
I have not.
Yak. Yards after catch, like I think.
Gotcha.
Yak, yards after catch, right? It makes sense, and that's what he was, man. He'd catch the short ones, take them a long way. He'd catch the long ones and take them longer. So I thought that was a pretty fun nickname
that's perfect. That's a perfect nickname for him. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
At 50, you went offensive line. Guard Damian Lewis out of LSU, and I know he's another kid that had a really big Senior Bowl week. Obviously the Bears have need an offensive line. Now, they did bring in Jermaine Ifedi, the former first-round pick Seahawks. I think they signed him to a 1-year contract yesterday, so he's probably going to be thrown into that rotation in terms of competing for that right guard spot, possibly maybe a swing tackle position. So we'll see. So, your thoughts on Damian Lewis from LSU? Yeah,
and just a quick caveat on that. I mean, I made the pick and then heard about the Ifedi signing, but to me, it doesn't really like you said, it's a 1-year deal. It's a former first-round pick out of Seattle who I have to admit I kind of liked coming out. I thought he was kind of an interesting player, but his technique was all over the place. And, he's one of those guys that I think they just sort of misevaluated a little bit, but bringing him in on a 1-year prove it kind of deal, and he's played multiple positions, worth a shot. I think it was actually a pretty nice little signing. So, you just don't know what you have. So, could he win the starting job at guard? Possibly. Do they need more help there? I think so. Does it have to be one of those second-round picks? Probably not, but I really like Lewis, and I think at some point in the draft, whether it's one of those second-rounders or further down, they're going to add just, I don't know if I can say this on the show, but an ass kicker, somebody who you could put up front, and this is nothing against Cody Whitehair or James Daniels, who I like a lot as players. I really do. I think they're good players. But I'd love to see a little bit of toughness up front and a little bit of that just kind of raw power that they lacked. When they had to run the ball in those short yard situations, it just wasn't happening. So you bring in Juan Castillo, you give him a kid like that, it makes perfect sense. Now, was that a little high for Lewis? Maybe. Some teams have him in the 3rd or 4th. Some teams have him, in that range, I would say. But I wouldn't say it was a colossal reach at that spot. It was just a little bit of one. So there are obviously other positions they can look at. It was just one of those things like, here's a player I like a lot, and I'm going to put him to the Bears, and it's a mock draft, and I don't care.
Yeah, actually, a couple players that I'm hoping, kind of drop, or I was, kind of projecting to see they might be in that Bears range at 43 and 50 are two offensive tackles. But now, I mean, after what they did at the Senior Bowl and the Combine, I think these guys might go in the first round, late first round. That's Josh Jones out of Houston, and Ezra Cleveland, as a kid out of Boise State. I've been on since the beginning of the season. This guy's a left tackle, NFL left tackle all day. The athletic ability, the length, the build, the feet. Yep. Your thoughts on those two guys and they probably have outplayed or outperformed, that Bears range. I'm thinking in the second round.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, there are people who swear Cleveland's going to go in the first round. I put him at 18. I think that's maybe a tad high. Realistically, the 20s make more sense, or obviously one of the last dozen picks of the first round or something like that. But I think the Miami Dolphins are going to like him a lot. I think that's the type of player, and they might like Jones too. I mean, they're not the same player, but they have some similar traits in the sense that they both played a lot of football. They both played a lot of left tackle. They both made clear strides throughout their career, and they both faced non-Power 5 competition. So they're kind of being asked the same questions a little bit. Now, Cleveland tested better. I mean, across the board. Jones had a really good Senior Bowl week, up and down, but I thought overall really good. I would say, he didn't hurt himself by any means. He had some matchups that he lost, but everybody does down there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not as wild on Jones as some people are. So I've heard some people say he could go to Tampa Bay at 14 or something. Man, are we that desperate for tackles? I like him. Don't get me wrong, but
right.
14 is, that's, you better be getting a guy with at least Pro Bowl potential, I think. And I don't necessarily see him quite that high. And Cleveland, it was the only thing that troubled me was that when he struggled a handful of times last year, and it was usually like not finishing guys off, kind of, leaving plays out there a little bit. It was the ankle or the foot injury that he had, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
It lingered all year long. I couldn't tell how much the ankle affected him. It was just a little bit of a tricky evaluation, but all those things you said, he is an athlete, and he's said to be a good kid too, really smart, kind of quirky. He'll fit in a locker room. I mean, there's a lot to like about both those guys.
So, Eric, we got a couple of questions from our live chat. First one is, would you trust the Bears to draft safety J.R. Reed from Georgia in the 5th round and start him after addressing offensive needs?
It's a very specific question. My goodness. First of all, I really like J.R. Reed. I'm glad that the chatter follower or whatever you want to call it there brought him up, because I think he's being slept on a little bit. Yep. And I think he could possibly go as high as the 4th round. I mean, they couldn't say enough good things about him, like his leadership, his toughness, his work ethic, all that stuff. Is he the most blessed player ever physically? No. I mean, he's got a nice build. He ran a nice 40 at the Combine, did nice jumping drills, tested better than most teams thought he would. So I think that's going to bump him up.
Okay.
I couldn't quite fit him into my 3rd round. I did the 2-round mock on Yahoo, and then as a way of luring people over to my Facebook page for more eyes on that, I did a 3rd round mock just on the Facebook page. But he's on that cusp, I think, of like late 3rd, early 4th, I would say, if I had to guess. I mean, at the end of the year, most teams had 5th round grades on him.
Okay.
So that would have made sense. I think that the testing really kind of helped him out because the intangibles were great, high-end competition, all that stuff. Some teams like their Richard LeCount kid, who's going to be a senior next year. They said he's just more of a natural play. He's more of like an Eddie Jackson type as opposed to I don't know. I try to think of a good guy to compare him to, but yeah, I mean, if you watch him, you just see lots of little things. Like he's always pointing things out. He's a communicator. He's a good football player. I think he's going to have a 10-year career and be very solid.
The next question we had from the chat, the first one actually was from our guy Swanky32. This one, Alex Acevedo wants to know what you think of Anthony Gordon and where do you project him to go?
Yeah, he's an interesting evaluation too. And, one of those guys who caught my eye early in the season. First of all, I mean, just the sheer fact that Luke Falk had been drafted 2 years ago, and then Gardner Minshew as well last year. I figured whether it was that Gage Gubrud kid, I don't exactly know how to say his last name, the Eastern Washington transfer, or Gordon, whoever won the battle, I said, I mean, they get drafted. Like that offense gives them opportunities. You're throwing all the time. You get to see the mechanics. They rep it so much in practice that these guys end up becoming really sort of fluid throwers and that sort of thing. He doesn't have a great build. He kind of looks like a minor league shortstop or something, like like a little skinny guy or something, but he's intelligent as heck. He's kind of a tough, overlooked kid, like a very poor man's Burrow in some respects. He can throw off kind of different platforms and stuff. His production, outstanding, obviously last year, the one shot he got. He has nice touch. Like he just puts it in there and kind of feathers it in there beautifully over the head of the linebacker in front of a safety or whatever. And so the more I watched him, the more I liked him. But in the best competition, the best defense he faced, not as good. The Utah game wasn't pretty. He had some weird moments along the way. He seemed to kind of plateau a little bit towards the end of the season, but I would guess he's probably in that 5th or 6th round range, but he could sneak into the back end of the 4th, like in those compensatory picks or something. I like James Morgan from FIU better. He's just got better physical tools, but there's something about Gordon that's very interesting to me. I don't know if he'll ever be a starter, but it wouldn't shock me if he ends up being a very sort of reliable number 2.
Yeah, similar here with Gordon, man. It's a guy I've been on all year. The listeners here, they know my admiration for Anthony Gordon. And like I said, the touch, the quick release that he has, his feet are always, active in the pocket, and he's got a, solid pocket presence. But man, you were in that at Senior Bowl, and when that murmur, that hush, that came over the auditorium when they announced his weight at 199. I was like, what? But I know I talked to him. He said he wanted to, put on more weight for the combine. I think he came in at 205 or 206. So that's one of my biggest things about him is that weight. He's got to have to put on some weight. Obviously, a guy that's going to have to sit, a couple of years and learn and develop. And the 1 year starter thing is kind of got, people here in Chicago a little antsy with Mitch Trubisky. Only had 1 year experience starting in college. So, that's a little thing here as well that, guys are kind of looking at. But Anthony Gordon, definitely a guy that I like. I like his ability in terms of maybe projecting him as a, worst case scenario, a very valuable backup. But we were talking about safeties earlier, and there's a kid that I got to do some more work on. But this kid has been, on a meteoric rise, this postseason ever since, he was named to the Senior Bowl roster, and that's Lenore Ryan's Kyle Duggar. He's a small school guy, obviously, but he's a heck of an athlete. Pretty much, if you want to call him a freak athlete. Tell us something about Kyle Duggar here.
And this is great. You guys are setting me up like I can't believe. I actually just wrote about him today. He was my number 41 overall prospect, I want to say. Now that's a little high. I mean, I put a good grade on him for a kid who nobody had heard of prior to his junior day workout. Nobody outside of Hickory, North Carolina, anyway. Who only played 7 games last year, had a injured hand that kept him out the last 5 games, I want to say. Played against division, he was playing against Slippery Rock and Mars Hill and a new school that I had never heard of. I watched today, actually. University of Virginia at Wise or something like that. I don't know. It was some other first time for me.
Now you're making up schools, Eric. You're making up schools.
Exactly right. Yeah, Virginia Wise or something like that. But so clearly the competition level. I mean, as a scout told me years ago when I first got into the business, like I asked him, how do you scout small school kids? He said, they better be the best looking guy out there. They better be the one who stands out on the tape. If you watch 10 plays and he hasn't done something, he may not be that good. And the good thing about him is that the size you mentioned, 6'1 plus, 220 pounds, can run like a deer. I'm surprised he didn't break 4.5, actually. He's running the 4.4s. Actually, I think he did. He ran like a 4.48 or 9 or something.
Yeah.
But he ran a 4.41 at 223 pounds at their junior day. And that's what got all the scouts freaked out. Like, who is this kid? And then they look. He has 10 career interceptions in 40 games. He has 6 forced fumbles, 6 fumble recoveries, 7 touchdowns, 6 of them on punts, 1 on a pick. I think the third play of the season, he ran back a pick 6. He's just got a knack for making plays. And I don't know how much you guys have watched of Jaquaski Tart from the 49ers.
Yep.
Came out of Samford College, a little lower level of comp. That's who he reminds me of. Like, he's just one of those guys who's going to be, a starter for a while. I think he'll have a little adaptation to the league, but he can run back punts. He can be a nickel or a dime linebacker. He can be your third safety that first year. And he's smart, quiet, humble, driven. He's fun to root for. I'll throw in one more name too, Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois. I was a little late on him. I didn't quite realize how good a player he was. So he missed my top 100 picks, and I'm regretting it because he'll go in the top 100. He's going to be like a second or third rounder. So to have 2 safeties from FCS schools this year go in the top like 75 or 80 picks is really wild. We just never see that. So that's good. It's a different year.
And both these kids are, like you mentioned, phenomenal athletes. Both Chin and Doug are phenomenal athletes. So these are guys that are going to, there's going to be a step up in competition, and there's going to be an adjustment period there, no doubt. But these are guys that, are definitely have the potential and those traits to probably excel at the next level. So moving on to the offensive line, we talked about it a little bit earlier. There's a kid I know you're high on, and I like a lot too, and that's Michigan center Cesar Ruiz. Now, I know you said that you had him as your top overall interior lineman.
I think so. Yeah, I believe he was now, granted, could one of those tackles kick inside? Yes. But I'm talking like they played guard or center in college, ergo they're a guard. You know what I mean? That's who I counted him. Yep.
Exactly. And I think Ruiz got overshadowed by some of his teammates, Runyon and Bretson. So I think, tell us what you like about Ruiz.
Yeah, he's really interesting, and he's kind of got this. They listed him at 6'4" at Michigan. I think he's about 6'2" and 3/8 or something like that. So he's a little on the shorter side. He reminds me a little bit of Garrett Bradbury coming out last year. Not a little bit of James Daniels and a little bit of Garrett Bradbury. So a little NFC North kind of flavor to him there. And he's a tough kid. He's mentally tough, right? He's had to deal with all kinds of stuff in his life. His dad was changing a tire when Ruiz was 8 years old, got hit by an oncoming car, killed him. His mother was trying to raise him by herself in the bad part of Camden. Smart kid, stuck to his athletics, his academics, respected by teammates. He's a happy-go-lucky guy. Stepped in as a true freshman. He was kind of thrown into the fire at right guard, didn't play very well, but talking to the people there, they said it made him tougher. It really made him realize that he has a little bit of work to do. And he stepped up, took that center job, was much better, in my opinion, than Mason Cole. I think his name was Mason Cole, the guy he replaced in 18. And big, strong hands, doesn't pancake people. Like, he's not one of those guys who just goes out and, road grades through guys. He's going to have a little bit of work moving people in the run game, I think, at the next level, but quick, agile, great on screens and draws, getting out of the second level, very smart guy. He just feels like, will he ever be an elite center? Maybe not, but I think he's going to be a very serviceable guy once he figures out how to play better with leverage and not get kind of long armed by those big D tackles. Like with those, when the Alabama put Raekwon Davis over him, he just had a hard time dealing with the length. He's got shorter arms. So it's about getting low and getting that leverage and winning, at that point.
So to go back to quarterback, Eric, obviously you can tell as Bears fans, we're clamoring for that next star quarterback. We had another question from Swanky in the chat. He wants to get your thoughts on Jake Fromm.
I kind of like Fromm more than other people do. I think, some of the things he faced this year and really some of his own poor decisions, it's not like you can't hold it against him. I mean, the South Carolina game was just a abomination. He should never have played as poorly as he did. But what I like about him is that he is smart and tough. He doesn't have much in the way of physical skill. Like he's short, he's unathletic, doesn't have a rocket arm, but he's got a better arm than I think people give him credit for. People talk about him like he's got some pop gun arm and he's just this little dinker and dunker. That's not his game. No, he's an intermediate passer, I think. Can he thread a 17-yard out? Probably not. But, I don't know. I'm not terribly worried about the arm. I'm worried about the consistency play to play. And he went from being a 65% passer his whole career, pretty much, 62, 63, 64, to barely being able to hit 50% down the stretch. And granted, a lot of drop passes, but still, I feel like his confidence really took a hit late in the year. Now, James Coley, their offensive coordinator, came under fire, and people were calling for his head mid-season, and they had injuries at receiver, but still had a good run game, still had a first-class offensive line, and Fromm didn't play as well as he needed to. I thought he would go back to school. I was surprised when he came out, but I think when it's all said and done, we're talking about somewhere in the middle of round 2 to the middle of round 3. And, he's the kind of guy that is never going to wow you, but I think you can win. I think you can win with him. And I think the smarts, the toughness, the desire to be the guy with the ball in his hands, they're all the traits you want in a quarterback.
Yeah. That's all we want here in Chicago is to win.
Right. Don't look scared. Yeah, right. I know.
Hey, Eric, for me, this draft starts at number 3 with Detroit. There's overwhelming feeling that in league circles that the Lions are going to trade that pick. Do you concur? Do you think they're going to trade? And if so, what are some of the teams that are looking to come up? And I'm assuming they're going to come up for a quarterback, correct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the price it would cost with quarterbacks on the board, I don't think. I mean, as good as Chase Young is, and I really, really like him. He's my highest graded player. You'd have to get like a once in a generation type of non-quarterback to trade up at that level for. So yeah, it's probably going to be for Tua, maybe for Herbert. The question is, does Washington entertain offers at 2? Probably yes, but will they ultimately pull the trigger? I don't know. Probably not. So if it plays out the way you said, which is very likely, Detroit would love to move down to 5. I mean, they would love to go to 5 because I think the feeling I get is that the Giants wouldn't take a corner. So if they can move down 2 spots, get some picks back, take Jeffrey Okudah at 5, they're in great shape. They would love to do that. Could they get him at 6? Probably, maybe. We'll see. So I think they would be a little more comfortable dealing with Miami. Now, will Miami give them what they want, which is probably pick number 26? I doubt it. I don't know that they would. I think they would try to give them the 2 second rounders, or give them, maybe a 2 this year and a 1 next year or something, and then get a pick back as well from Detroit. Again, it's hard to know because those teams aren't telling me what the offers are going to be or anything like that. So I'm having to kind of read the tea leaves a little bit, but I think Miami is kind of slow playing it. They're being very cool. They know they have options. They could go Cam Newton in free agency if they really wanted to. They could wait for next year's quarterback draft if they want to. They have options, and that's what they're going to tell Detroit. They're going to say, bro, we don't have to move up to 3. We can sit right here and take Justin Herbert, a guy they've been scouting since 2017. They like Justin Herbert. Do they love him? I don't know. I mean, that's really what it boils down to right there. There's this chess game going on between a desperate Lions team that has to feel good about itself coming out of the year. Otherwise, Patricia's gone, Quinn's gone.
Yep.
Versus the Miami team that is loaded up, has all kinds of picks and ammo, has some good vibes going again. They don't have to do squat if they don't want to. So that's just such a fascinating potential chess match they could be playing there.
So, Eric, we want to thank you so much for your time, man. You've been with us since the start of the show. It's going on 45 minutes, and we just want to thank you. So, want to let you know this is your 4th appearance on Bears Barroom, and we've got people in the chat loving it. I know how much Danny enjoys having you on, as well as myself and Eldo, and we can't thank you enough, man, for each time you come on the show. Let our listeners know where they can follow you, number one, and number two, what you've got out besides your mock draft, any pieces you have coming up that you want to let them know about.
Yeah, and first of all, apologies. If anybody's out there like, who is this guy blabbing? I'm on like a caffeine kick here. I've been writing all day, and I'm just like letting out all this steam on your show here. So
that's
all
perfect.
good, man. We love it. Like Bad said, I could talk to you for hours, Eric. So.
Yeah, I like it too as well, guys. So it's great. But yeah, no, check me out on Twitter, Eric ERIC _Edholm EDHOLM. Yeah, I just did Kyle Duggar today. I've got Terrell Lewis will either drop tonight, the Alabama pass rusher, or tomorrow morning. And then we've got Laviska Shenault coming up after that, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I don't know. We've got other guys coming up too. We've got the guy from Mars Hill. I don't know. So yeah, there's a lot. I'll be counting down my top 50, and I've got an update on Tua Tagovailoa that'll probably come down either tomorrow or on Monday, depending on what information I get.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric, again, for your time. We appreciate you joining us with everything going on. Man, stay safe, keep your family safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir, boys. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, Danny. So another great guest here on Draft on Tap. Eric's fourth appearance. Aldo popped that in the chat, and I was just I couldn't believe this was the fourth time we had him on already.
Yeah, Eric's very knowledgeable, obviously, about not only just the NFL, but the draft and prospects. He does a great job of breaking them down. And, yeah, he's a guy, like you said, I could talk to him for hours, man. Just very knowledgeable and can go back and forth. And, he knows the stuff. And he has a lot of contacts around the league as well. So definitely a joy every time we have Eric Edholm on Draft on Tap.
It's Scouts Corner with Bears Barroom Draft Analyst Danny Shimon, right here on Draft on Tap. Oh yeah, it's that time, everybody. It's time for Scouts Corner here on Draft on Tap. First of all, we want to thank you for all of your submissions, either to Danny on Twitter at dshimon56, to myself at Ryan Badgley 40, or to the Draft on Tap account at Draft Tap. We can't thank you enough. Keep them coming. I know we've gotten a couple more today, so Danny is really putting in the work on these players, and you guys are really going to get the benefit of his scouting reports throughout this segment. And starting things off tonight with Scouts Corner, and Danny's going to have a great first prospect here coming up right here on Scouts Corner. And Danny, your first prospect tonight on Scouts Corner.
Yetur Gross-Matos, defensive line, Penn State. Matos is a guy that I got a lot of requests on. A lot of people want to hear about him, and he's just basically, this kid is an excellent sized, well proportioned, very long arms athlete. Like I said, just a long limbed athlete, whose long strides make up ground in a hurry. He measured in at 6'5", 266 pounds with 35-inch arms at the combine. Combine that with a 34-inch vertical leap. Good overall athletic ability, agility, and flexibility, to work those edges effectively. Displays solid lateral quickness, capable of crossing a blocker's face mask and winning the inside shoulder quickly. Displays solid short area change of direction ability. Plays with outstanding balance. He keeps his feet when those running backs and tight ends try to chop his feet. He does a nice job of keeping his balance. He can slant, stunt, and get skinny to play and penetrate those gaps. Processes quickly. This is a guy that identifies keys, recognizes run versus pass post snap almost immediately. In terms of a pass rusher, he's more of a power-based rusher, but you do see on his tape that he utilizes his hands. I'm talking about swim moves, a swipe and a rip, to counter blockers, to their inside shoulder, get inside, fly into the quarterback. When he presses and he plays long, again, utilizing those long arms, he can use his short area quickness to rip and dip his shoulders beneath the offensive tackle's pad level and gain that outside leverage. So basically, this is a guy that's got moves that can be able to beat an offensive lineman to his inside and outside shoulder. In terms of a run defender, this guy is solid in that area as well. Again, uses his hands to be able to get into the backfield along with his length to drop a running back for a loss. He was only a 2-year starter at Penn State. And he had 37 career tackles for loss. So this is a guy that definitely affects both the run game and the passing game. In terms of setting that edge as a run defender, he's solid there as well. Once again, using that length, that size, and the ability to shift his feet laterally, to provide that hard edge and contain that running back. All the while keeping his shoulders square to the line of scrimmage, funneling that play flow back inside to his line mates, back inside to the middle of the defense. So, some of the things I put down in terms of negatives on him, he's not as twitchy or sudden, with his takeoff at the snap. Some of these, edge rushers that you see now coming out, they're all twitched up, more, overall they're quicker in terms of more explosive off their first step. He could be neutralized in tight quarters. He does not consistently disengage or play with power. Needs to add some more strength, in my opinion, to play some more power and be able to improve his anchor or in his strength. In terms of double teams, he can be wiped out by double teams. So again, that anchor and that ability to maintain his ground, some added play strength is areas where I can see him, developing and getting better at. In summary, though, Gross-Matos' combination of size, length, and athleticism offers defensive coaches the versatility to play multiple positions along the defensive front. This is a kid that can line up at either the left or right end position, and he can also slide inside to defensive tackle on obvious passing downs, allowing for defensive coordinators to get more speed in off the edge. For me, this kid projects as a base 4-3 end and a 40 front. So teams, if you think of teams with defenses like the Seattle Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers, teams that utilize a true 4-man front, I think Matos projects better as a 4-3 base end. So that's my scouting report on Penn State's Yetur Gross-Matos.
Danny, your next player in Scouts Corner.
John Hightower, wide receiver, Boise State. So, in my continued, approach of trying to find speed and trying to find specifically speed at the wide receiver position, I present to you John Hightower. This is a kid out of Boise State. Who's very productive, a guy who makes big plays. Last year he averaged over 18 yards per reception. For his career, he averaged almost 18 yards per reception at Boise State to go along with 14 touchdowns. Solid height, about 6'1", with a slender build, though. He's about 189 pounds, but he's a speed receiver. This kid ran a 4.43 40 at the combine. He had a 38.5 vertical leap, so it shows that lower body explosiveness. Possesses, again, very good straight line speed and acceleration to take the top off of a defense and threaten the field vertically. This is a guy, like I've been trying to say, we need guys with speed that can kind of replace Taylor Gabriel, the element that he brought to the offense. He's got long strides coupled with that second gear that eats up a cornerback's cushion really fast, and he can glide back by the DB and gain that over-the-top leverage. He can easily separate versus man coverage on vertical routes and as well on crossing routes as well. Solid hands to pluck the football out of the air. Good leaping ability, as we mentioned, with that 38.5 vertical. To be able to go up and high point the ball and bring it in. He's slippery after the catch. Offering some yards after contact ability. Especially on those slip screens, those bubble screens. Just get the ball in his hands and let him do his thing again. He was used a lot on jet sweeps at Boise State. Again, just finding different ways to get the ball in his hands, allow him to, again, make plays and utilize his athletic ability and his speed. A solid kickoff returner. So another kid that will give you a little added dimension on special teams. Averaged almost 25 yards a kickoff last season for Boise State. Now, in terms of some of the negatives on him, we kind of mentioned, he's got a thin build with narrow shoulders and marginal play strength. Can get rerouted or thrown off track by a good press or a jam, especially by a good physical cornerback at the line of scrimmage. There are times where I saw him, double catching a ball or using his body to secure the catch. And I don't know if that was just a concentration or whatnot, but, like I said, he does show to have nice soft hands, so I don't think he needs to do that. But there are a couple of things I jotted on tape that I saw him doing, double catches and curling the ball with your body is something that for receivers I don't like to see. His work in zones has to improve. He's got to be better at finding those soft spots and coverages. Also has to learn how to continue to work to uncover, not just give up on his route. There are times where, he was not, the primary option or the quarterback went to a secondary or third read. And he just kind of, throttled it down and just kind of gave up on the route. He's got to be able to continue that route downfield, continue to sell it, and continue to make the defender think that he's going to, possibly be an option in the play. So in summary, this is a kid that's got that home run hitting speed. He's a guy that can have some solid size. We'll need to add some strength. But if you bring him in, he's going to add that added dimension, especially if you're looking for a team like the Bears, where he's another playmaker, a guy who's got athleticism, who's got the ability to take a top off a defense and challenge a defense vertically. So I think that's an element on offense that the Bears have been missing, especially now with Taylor Gabriel no longer on the roster. And I think it's very, very important that the Bears somehow find a way to get some added speed, a vertical threat on offense. And I think John Hightower is a guy that could provide that for him. Again, he's a guy for me, he's like a late day 2, early day 3 pick. So that's my scouting report on John Hightower.
It's Scouts Corner with Bears Barroom Draft Analyst Danny Shimon, right here on Draft on Tap.
Ryan, your mic is off, bud.
Thanks, Danny. I appreciate that. So, guys, before we end the show tonight, want to let you know about the prices in the swag shop. So, Alex Acevedo reached out to me. The classic t-shirt prices, here they are. From small to extra large, they'll run $27 each. 2 extra large, $29.50. 3X, $30.50. And then 4X and 5X will be $31 each. From there, we will... release a little bit more on the swag shop as well as you go. You can pick your colors. So you've got the navy shirt with an orange graphic, white graphic, black shirt, white graphic, pink shirt, white graphic. Plenty more to come. If you heard 100 Proof last night, you know just how great this swag shop is going to be with our man Alex Acevedo running it. And we can't thank him enough for doing that. We want to remind you to stick around for I Have a Stream coming up here just as we wrap up. Danny, want to thank you again for another great show. Eric Edholm, a great guest, and Danny with another fantastic breakdown of players in Scouts Corner. And with that, a great show comes to an end, and we want to thank Eric Edholm, the lead draft analyst at Yahoo Sports, for joining us and his most recent thoughts, not only on the Bears, but on the draft as well. Danny knocking it out of the park again with another great Scouts Corner, and thank you to everyone who listened live and joined us in the Mixler chat. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. If you can't join us live, you can find us on the podcast version of Draft on Tap shortly after the live show on all your favorite podcast streams. Thank you to everyone at Bears Barroom who continues to make the network as spectacular as it is. And please join us next week for another great episode of Draft on Tap. Good night, everybody.